Good day. Welcome to the 2021 General Election Candidates Forum for Kansas City, Kansas and Wyandotte County. I am Merle Bland with Business West. Business West and Kansas City, Kansas Community College are the co-sponsors of this forum. Let me introduce the panelists who will ask questions about the candidates. They are Mary Rupert, the editor of the Wyandotte Daily Online, J.D. Rios, a retired administrator with the Kansas City, Kansas School District, and Elnora Jefferson, a community volunteer with Groundwork Northeast Revitalization Group. Candidates will have 2 minutes for opening remarks. Then the panelists will ask questions of candidates who will have 2 minutes to respond. Panelists will have the right to ask follow-up questions. Candidates will have 1 minute for closing remarks. Please understand this is not a debate. Candidates are urged to focus on the issue. The forum is being taped for playback on the college's public access channels and YouTube. The first set of candidates are running for the Kansas City Board of Public Utilities. Our first candidate will be David Haley. David, you have 2 minutes to make your presentation.
Let me say good day and thank you again, Mr. Bland, Ms. Rupert, Ms. Jefferson, Mr. Rios, for the time and effort that it takes to convene and to have this very necessary forum to discuss, in my case and in the case of the candidates here today, the Board of Public Utilities. You and Mr. Royer at the college are crucial because we have so few forums these days, it appears, in our media especially, that can be retelecast to talk about the issues in Wyandotte County, talk about the candidates that will represent them. Very briefly, I am David Haley. I am a candidate for the Board of Public Utilities District 2 at large. And between now and November 2nd, I would hope to be a new member to the board. Of our 6 members, we only have 4 members of the 6 who are predominantly from Piper. And I hope that I will be, if elected, a member that will speak to issues that affect a broader number of our ratepayers on the BPU board. I'm a native Wyandotte Countyan, have been involved in public service for a long time. Most importantly, will be transparent and accessible once elected to the issues that will bring me to the BPU board. Thank you again for this opportunity to each of you.
Our next candidate will be Brian Matlock. Brian?
Hello, thank you all for having me here today. I'm running for the Board of Public Utilities District 2, so that's like the big slice through the middle of Wyandotte. I've lived in Strawberry Hill for about 12 years with my wife and daughter, and am an economist as well as a community health worker. I've spent basically my career serving the community in mental health treatment and homeless services and all sorts of things because that's where my heart is. And also I am an economist who does public health research and have a lot of the data skills in order to figure out what's going on, research, see what other people are doing. And I am running for this because I think BPU needs changes. It is publicly owned. It is something that should be serving the people of Wyandotte. But there's a lack of transparency and community outreach and involvement, as well as different things that are just out of step with what we need, such as last year giving almost $500,000 in raises to the executives while people are suffering in the pandemic. And so I would like to see the priorities be to better serve our community, have more transparency, focus on building a more sustainable, equitable future, fair prices, and so I hope you'll consider voting Matlock. And just for the reference, I'm not District 2 at large, so Haley and I are in different races. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, our next candidate will be Mary Gonzalez. Mary?
Good evening. My name is Mary Gonzalez, and I'm running for the at-large District 1 position. First, I'd like to thank Business West and Kansas City, Kansas Community College for hosting the forum and for inviting me to participate. I usually like to start off my introductions by saying I'm not an original dot, but I got here as soon as I could. And that was in the mid 80s, and I came to start my teaching career in the Piper School District. And I feel fortunate enough that I ended my career in the Piper School District. I raised my boys at about 85th and Parallel, and my sons are all products of the Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools. I will just list a few of my strengths as, and I currently live in the Rosedale area, and I'm married to John Mendez. My strengths, I feel, as your board member, is that I'm an ethical and honest office holder. I return calls, answer communications when customers call me with difficulties. I try to work toward a solution. I'm transparent in every situation. I work to increase, and I've done this for a lot of years, to increase cooperation between the unified government and the BPU when we have joint projects. I'm eager to learn. As a retired educator, I consider myself a lifelong learner, and the utility industry is complex and ever-changing. I know it in my heart, and I say it frequently, that the strength of the BPU is our employees. Everybody knows them. They live in your community, maybe down the street or around the corner. Their kids go to school with your kids. They are an integral part of our community, and they contribute to our community and to our economy. I will strive to continue to keep the BPU our community-owned municipal utility. Thanks again for inviting me.
Okay. Now we'll go to the questions, and we'll start with Mary Rupert, and she will ask questions first of Mary Gonzalez. Mary?
Thank you. There have been thousands of BPU customers who got behind on their bills this year, and disconnection moratoriums were implemented, including one that will end on November 3rd. What should be done in the future about BPU customers who can't afford to keep up with their bill payments? And are moratoriums a good idea in the future?
Well, I think, Mary, first of all, that maybe we'll never have another pandemic that put people in the position that it did. It seems that we always have people that have a difficult time paying their bills. I have to agree that the moratorium was good in this situation. It was really the only thing we could do. It went on longer. I voted to end it a little before November the 3rd. It went a little bit longer. Most of the other utilities had cut it off sooner than that. I think what we need to do at the BPU is help our customers know about all the things that are available to them when they get behind or can't. There's the United Way, there's LEAP funds. Right now we're working with the Kira funds. There's multiple ways to get help. I just feel like our customers don't always know, and maybe it's our fault that we need to do a better job. But there's help out there. We just need to get it to our customers.
Senator Haley, your response to that question.
So as we have seen, thank you, Mr. Bland, Ms. Rupert, as we've watched this pandemic unfold and the ripple effect that it has and continues to have on many of us in the community, especially those who have found themselves marginalized by a must-have like our utility, we have tried to grapple in an unprecedented, and as Ms. Gonzalez said, what will hopefully be something that we won't have to repeat. How do we handle those who've gotten so far behind and who are now being reinstated after this moratorium has been lifted is a tremendous question to ask. And I know we've worked in concept with various social service agencies. I know that the utility has now implemented identifying who exactly will be affected or disaffected, so that no one will actually end up being disconnected for a delinquency. There are going to be those who fall through the cracks. And just like with evictions, for example, there are those who will not be able to catch up with what is due the utility for services, or in this case, for utilities having been rendered, and that we will just have to find some way to work that out. I guess this is a long way of saying in these unprecedented times, we aren't exactly sure what the fallout is going to be and which one of our neighbors will face an interruption of their services going into the holiday season of all time. But I would hope that compassion would be the watchword of the existing board. If elected November 2nd, I, David Haley, will not be sworn in or invested or installed yet. I hope the existing board will look compassionately to those who have a legitimate reason for having been interrupted, and that we look at compassion with our neighbors and our ratepayers in that capacity, knowing that this is unprecedented and will not apt to reoccur.
Brian Matlock, your response to this question.
Yeah, I believe it was absolutely essential what happened, especially since it took so long to get the Kira program up and running efficiently. There were, I think by June or July, there were 6,000 plus applications for Kira, and only 200 applications had been reviewed and approved. So the huge wait list of people waiting to hear if they're going to get funding, and then BPU was about to start shutting people off because they didn't want to have the financial risk of maybe we'll get paid for Kira, maybe we won't. I think it was absolutely the right decision to make sure that people who were eligible for aid got that aid. And we should also think about it in economic development. Getting federal funds pumped into our community while we are in such an economic downturn is so helpful to get our economy functioning and to get people spending at local businesses, restaurants, shops. And so I think pretty aggressively seeking after those type of funds is important. With the ARPA funding moving forward, I'd like to see some of it allocated to help people get out of arrears who've been struggling. When you're going out and talking in the community, you hear all these people who've lost their jobs and have had ongoing health problems because of COVID, other sorts of things. And people are really struggling out there. Moving forward, I think we do it best by making sure as few people need those type of assistance as possible, which is getting rid of some of the fees that the city puts on as a way to collect taxes, but it ends up being a regressive tax that affects the poor the most, things like the pilot, rather than doing property taxes or something that is commensurate with what you have. If you are on a fixed income or a low wage with a family to support, it is so hard to even make the bill before you have any use because of all of these fees and things. And so we should, one of the policy suggestions I have is a lifeline rate. So up to a certain point, there's a deeply discounted rate so that people who are pensioners on disability, they can have minimal usage and not have to pay as much, and then it goes to a normal rate after that, which also incentivizes people to conserve. So anyways, yes, I definitely think we need to take care of our most vulnerable now and in the future.
Thank you. Our next question will be from JD Rios, and we'll start with Brian. JD, your question.
Well, good afternoon, candidates. Appreciate your willingness to be part of this forum, and appreciate your willingness to run. Brian, you kind of began a little bit with the answer to a question that I have, and that is, can you articulate current BPU policies that disproportionately impact the poor in our community, and what can be done about those policies that disproportionately affect our poor community?
Yeah, so there are a few things. One, as Senator Haley mentioned, is most of Wyandott's not represented, especially the places that most have the concentrated poverty. So being actively engaged in the community, like we notice those areas have lower turnout, they're more likely to be exposed to COVID because they're doing the essential work, like the hard labor jobs and things like that. So we need to actively, I think, for one, like there's a lot we can do to make meetings more useful, like specifically reaching out to the Latin American community, the like different community organizations, say, what are your people experiencing? And with one of my jobs, we did a study on tax sales and are still doing that. But the people on this list, who are they? What's going on? It turns out tons of people on fixed income, tons of people who are renters who don't speak English and are being sort of exploited and they didn't even know they were about to lose housing. And so, like, it is essential with shutoffs. I think we're going to run into some of the same things, like figuring out what's going on, what are the issues, and how can we solve it? Not just like, well, the cost of doing business, sorry, poor people. And then, yeah, so that I would also be interested in some like targeted, some of the most depressed areas, like have rate discounts that hopefully drive a little more economic development, but also alleviate the pressures on some of our most vulnerable members of our community. And then for all of the people who are working and have kids and can't show up to meetings, the videos should be posted publicly, the notes, the slideshows, because right now it's like hard to know how are these decisions even being made with the utility company.
Mary Gonzalez, your response to the question.
I need the question repeated.
Okay, JD?
JD, what was the question again?
Okay, sure, Mary. Can you articulate current BPU policies that disproportionately impact the poor of our community, and what can be done about those policies that disproportionately impact our poor community members?
Okay, since I'm just going to have a minute to do this, I'm just going to focus on one thing, and that's the CARE program that we're working really hard with now. I think we realize that not everybody has access to a computer and the way to fill out these forms that are necessary to get that particular aid. So we are partnering with the library, the West Branch Library, and we're meeting our customers there to help them fill out the forms for the CARE program and get that ball rolling for those that don't have the ability to have a computer in their home or broadband in their home. We also have Spanish-speaking people in our customer service. So anybody can come to our meetings. They're open and anybody can speak by signing up. And it's been difficult during Zoom, but you can still raise your little hand on the Zoom thing and speak up even during Zoom meetings. So we're just trying to go out and meet the people where they are right now for the CARE program. That's just one example.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next question will come from Eleanor Jefferson.
Sir, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Senator. Okay, your response.
Well, if I could, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Rios. Good day, sir. This is probably the fundamental reason that I am running for the BPU. I'm running because we have a disparate reaction to being able to sustain ourselves in Wyandotte County because of a disproportionate amount of what people are paying just to have electric and or water service. So what I propose and what I hope that we will see, and by the way, I do think, in response, or at least to augment what another response has been, it's good that we have Zoom right now for citizens, ratepayers, to log in every first and or every third Wednesday at 6 o'clock onto the Zoom link to let the concerns where there's policy differential or where there are payment differential aspects in place. It's excellent that we can now have without having to go down to 6 in Minnesota on first and third Wednesdays to have a citizen's response. I think that's good, and I hope that it will continue even after the pandemic. But to get to the question is, what policies are in place that make us disparate? And I have pushed for many years that in Topeka, we align ourselves with the Kansas Corporation Commission. When I say we, that the BPU can align itself with the KCC in terms of an evaluation of what the existing policies and procedures are that cause us to be out of whack. I'm not saying that we let the KCC govern us, because we are a not-for-profit utility and we elect the 6 members of the board to put those policies in place as administered by the GM. But let's see where we don't line up with the Evergys, or formerly the KCP&Ls, as governed by the KCC. Secondly, what is a very disparate part of what we are doing comes from our, as we all know, our UG charges, the taxes that are lined up on our utility bills every month when we open the bill and get sticker shock because we have a payment in lieu of taxes, or we have a water pollution abatement, or we have this tax or that. Every other utility in this state has a 15% cap of municipal charges. 15%. We are paying upwards of whatever. You all know what your bills look like. We all know the sticker shock, what comes over from the UG. And that disproportionately impacts the poor. It disproportionately impacts average income people in this county. Again, we should not have to pay our taxes through the UG when the rest of the state has a 15% to 16% cap on what it is that we pay for a for-profit utility. And so those are the 2 areas that I'd like to look at primarily. There are others, but I know my time is shy here. And thank you, JD Rios, again for the question.
Okay. Now we'll go to Elnora. Your question.
Okay, thank you, and good afternoon to everyone. And thank you, candidates, for running and for being here. My question, BPU question, is as what Mary stated, the moratorium is ending on November the 3rd on disconnects. The question that I have, and I've been grappling with for a while, is what gives the BPU the authority to disconnect electric and water service for the non-payment of UG charges? It's all the UG charges on which we bill. I'd like to know what gives the BPU the authority to disconnect for those, I presume, legitimate charges.
Okay, we'll start with Mary. Mary, your response.
It's my understanding that we have been continuing to pay the utility for whatever the pilot is, even though people haven't been paying their bills. We're still paying those city charges, those pilot charges. That's my understanding. I really don't know what the solution is to it. The city sets the pilot. The BPU board does not set the pilot, and it's payment in lieu of taxes, as you know, and I think it's 11.9%, which is higher than the national average for a municipal, which is more around 6%. But our board does not have the authority to change that number. And to Elnora's point, point in the question, I don't know a solution. How the city is the one that sets it, and we just pay it as a pass-through. So I don't really know, other than we're continuing to pay it during the moratorium for people who are not paying their bills.
Okay.
That's
Senator Haley, your response to this
Okay,
question.
and I'm sorry, could I please have the question asked again? There are actually some people working, I think they're from the BPU, working on the street outside. Sounds like, I don't know if you heard it, like jackhammers going on out there. So, I wonder if they're with the BPU. Anyway, please, if you could repeat the question.
Sure, yes, my pleasure. Sure, thank you. What gives the BPU the authority to disconnect a customer's electric and or water service for the non-payment of the UG charges that are billed? So if the customer may pay for his or her electric and water service, but yet and still does not pay for those UG charges,
oh.
and that accumulates, what gives the BPU the authority to disconnect the utility services because the UG charges are unpaid?
Okay, well, if I understand it correctly, it's because of what I consider to be, and thank you for the question, Ms. Jefferson. Thank you, Elnora. We have of course, a unified government, county, city, consolidated. And oddly enough, I actually ran for mayor in '97, losing in the general to Mayor Marinovich, Carol Marinovich. And what I said then, I say now, that if we don't consolidate the three entities, county, city, and utility of municipal government all into one, that the BPU could end up becoming, quote unquote, and the Kansan printed this, a slush fund for the new merged government, county, city government. I say that again 25 years now after consolidation. In answer to your question, with those charges that we see that the UG passes on that are, in other words, a tax through what any other city or county would levy, we are in the BPU providing those unaccounted for. I haven't seen, and maybe someone else can correct me, anything that's not accounted for when the pilot, however much is raised from the pilot, however much is raised from water pollution assessment, however much is raised by these taxes the UG imposes on our utility bills are unaccounted for. I have not seen, I will be asking for accountability from the UG as to where those monies go once they are extracted from us. Because as we all know, we can say, I'm only going to pay my consumption part of my BPU bill. I'm just going to pay for the electricity or the water that I utilized last month. I'm not going to pay these UG charges, and we'll be disconnected in 5 weeks just the same, unless of course we're protected by the Piper crew, which would let us go as they let, say, the T-Bones go. You know, if we have the T-Bones privilege, because we're empowered enough to have a majority of the board letting us run amok and not pay our electric and water and additional UG tax bill, if we're empowered like that, then of course we can go for weeks, months, years. But most of us don't have the T-Bone privilege. So we have to pay these taxes. And what gives that authority is the fact that we are two different entities, a consolidated government or UG and a utility, and the local control that the state has not interceded with gives the ability for that cozy relationship to exist, to the detriment, I feel, to most ratepayers. I again will push for a cap, the same cap that every other entity pays for the amount that can be billed every month by the local entity, the UG, cumulatively, pilot, water pollution, trash, all of that, percentage based on consumption. I will push for that. And I'll look to the UG commission or mayor and to my fellow board members if I'm elected to look for equity and fairness in that policy.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. Now we'll turn to Brian Matlock for your response to the question.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Jefferson. for the question. I do not believe that it is by any legitimate authority. Think about what other taxes are they going to shut your water off? We all need water to live. Even if you don't pay your taxes, they'll maybe garnish your wages, but they'll let you have water. Even if they send you to jail for tax evasion, you'll have water in jail because you need water to survive. Like this idea that we can sort of hide taxes that are going to disproportionately affect poor folk. It's a regressive tax. And then there's just like, this is not a practice of a transparent community-run entity that, like, where is it on their website how that's being spent? Where is the clarity about or accountability for what that's being used for, why it's so high? I just don't believe that that is a legitimate part of it, that it's on the utility bill. If you didn't pay it, you get your utilities shut off. And think we need to be, if it's a tax, make it a tax, make it, and be very clear about what this is being used for, and make sure we are not just tacking on these charges that are a huge burden on people, to where even if you aren't using your AC during the summer, it's still costing so much just to be hooked in to the system. So,
Okay. Thank you. Now we'll go to Mary Rupert for the next question from the candidates. Mary?
Okay. Should the BPU bill become two separate bills, one to pay for the utilities and the other to pay for fees currently on the bill, such as the trash pilot, stormwater, and water pollution fees? In other words, should the bills be sent out separately, cut in half?
Brian Matlock, your response. Brian, you're muted.
oh, sorry. Thank you.
No.
Thanks for the question. While that situation, I think, would prevent the issue that Ms. Jefferson's question just raised about having it your utilities shut off over non-payment of taxes, I don't think that is the best option because, again, I think if the UG wants to raise news, they should do it through a progressive tax, one that is going to be distributed so you know, the people who have a lot more expendable income and a lot more usage of utilities will be paying a higher percentage than those who are on fixed income, elderly, people working low-wage jobs, because it's just not just, in my opinion. So while it would fix one issue, it's not my goal.
Okay. Senator Haley, your response to that question.
Thank you. If I understand it correctly, should there be two bills that come out? Is that the question, Mary?
Yeah.
One with the UG charges and one with the consumption charge? Is that
Yeah.
accurate? I think I'd have to agree with the preceding response. And by the way, BPU has a real nice new bill. I don't know if you all have gotten it yet. I just got mine the other day. It kind of does, and it continues to bifurcate what we're paying in terms of local charges and what we're paying for consumption. So I don't know if we had two different bills, if it's going to make any difference. They do. The BPU, I think, does a clear job of showing how much, both of them are, what we're paying in UG charges and what we're paying in local charges. So if having two bills, I mean, frankly, full disclosure, I get enough mail already coming in. You know, I would hate to miss my city bill. Where's my city bill that I owe? And where's my utility bill, consumption bill? So I don't mind having it in one. I do mind, again, that if we don't pay the consolidated bill, we get our utilities interrupted, our credit, just a whole school of things. Policies that I have with the BPU, in fact, what got David Haley to run and consider myself to always disrupt the incumbents that are there, are these policies that just do not work. The policies do not work whatsoever. I swear, I cannot believe the phone just rang. It's the BPU calling me right now, 573-9190. Okay, so anyway, I don't know what they want, but I can't talk right now. I'm on this call. I cannot believe this. The policies that are put in place at the BPU that have us, that non-response that we have to not paying the bill are not in different bifurcated bills as much as the inequity of what those taxes that our UG charges are on and the necessity to have to pay the taxes when we may not have consumed as much. Finally, I've seen senior citizens who said they can't turn the air up, the AC up. It doesn't matter that they did not consume more electricity because they have a whole host of standard charges that are the taxes from the UGs, and they have to be addressed. The policy that got me to run were policies that were not addressed by the current board, where bills have cropped up from years past, allegedly, and you call the board, as I did, and get a non-response and said, there's nothing we can do from a bill that you allegedly got 3 or 5, or in my case, 15 years ago, and if you don't pay it, we're going to interrupt all your charges. I said, okay, you keep that policy. We won't have that mentality in the future if David Haley has anything to say about it. And if elected, for these policy inequities that exist that everyone else understands, I want to be the voice for everybody in Wyandotte County who says these kind of atrocities and policies that don't match up for those of us who are just trying to live and have electricity and water like any other civilized society should have, will be addressed.
Thank you, Senator. Mary Gonzalez, your response.
We currently bill for the city as a municipal, where we bill and the city's charges are on the BPU as one bill. We're rolling out, as Senator Haley said, a new bill, which is like getting your separate BPU bill and your separate UG bill, so that hopefully customers can more clearly understand which charges are which. We have worked in concert with the UG to try to get the best visual for our customers for this, and it will be rolling out soon. A lot of people have already seen it. I think it did come out last month as a sort of a mock-up of what it's going to look like. Not sure that this is going to solve the problem, because I continue to hear complaints about the pilot, and I probably will continue to hear complaints about the pilot, if it's on a separate bill or if it's on our bill.
Okay. Our next question will come from JD Rios, and we'll start with Mary Gonzalez. JD?
Okay. Actually, your candidate's comments generated a question, follow-up to Lenora's question. I want to make sure that the viewers and I are clear now on what's being said. The BPU is a separate entity from the UG. Yet, what I'm hearing from all the candidates is that you have to enforce the tax, UG tax and fees on the bill by turning off utilities. And I guess I'm in disaccord with that. If they don't run you, you don't have to enforce UG policy, you enforce BPU policy. So is it BPU policy to turn off utilities due to non-payment of UG taxes and fees? Or is, in fact, you could keep your utilities running for customers if they paid their consumption part of their bill, but were unable to pay the UG part, and have the UG do some sort of whatever enforcement they want for their share of the bill. Because to me, this is impacting being a public utility versus being a private investor utility. If there's not a benefit to being a public utility, please let us know. So that's my question.
Yes, we'll start start with Mary Gonzalez. Mary?
I am really not sure. I don't know that people don't pay a certain percent of their bill. I don't really know that people just deduct the city charges and pay our. I really don't know if that happens. I don't know what happens if people do that, or how to enforce them to make them pay only their consumption. I seriously have no idea if people do this or not. I know we're continuing to pay the pilot during moratoriums and delinquent bills. That's what I know.
If I could follow up, Mary, so my understanding, if the people that aren't paying, the BPU out of their general budget are paying the pilot taxes?
That's my understanding. I might be wrong, JD, but that's what I thought.
Okay, well, I know I'm hearing you, and that's where I'm confused. I wouldn't think the BPU would be obligated to do that.
Senator, your comments on this subject.
Well, I bending my name back. I just got my new BPU bill here, right here, to show the breakdown of the charges. This is my bill, and it does break down the UG charges on it. Very colorful, pretty. It's done very nicely. But at the end of the day, I consumed on this particular bill $139, but the UG charges additionally are another $87. So I would love to just pay the $139 that I've consumed, but I'll bet you, we used to say dollar to a donut in my day, but now donuts cost $1. But I would bet you that if I don't pay the additional $87, I'm still gonna get shut off anyway, beyond the consumption. I'm all prepared to pay this on time. I always pay my bill on time because that's another issue, are the delinquency charges, the unaccountability. The late charges have never been accounted for. So where does that money go? I was told by a former employee that there were about $2.5 million in late charges that the utility got. Where was that applied? I mean, so what do we get, really? What do we get for this? And nobody's asking that question. It's a very cozy relationship between the UG Commission and the board, the general manager and the county administrator. And I don't want to seem like some itinerant, but I'm anguished. This is our town. We don't have a choice. There's a monopoly. If you want utility service, you got to play by rules that don't make sense to people outside of this area. And the collection agency for an unaccountable unified government for taxes that they're saying we've held harmless, the mill levy, the UG, I'm running for this office, I'm running as commissioner or mayor. Guess what? Your mill levy didn't go up on your tax rate at the unified government. No, it didn't. But look what did. We passed those charges on to your utility bills, and you got to pay those not once a year, as we would if they were taxes on our real property taxes, but prorated every month, or you don't enjoy having your lights or your water on. So yes, you do have to pay it, Mr. Rios. At least that's been my experience. I have never bifurcated my bill. Maybe we should try it and see, but I think the utility will still, now I'll tell you what, call Commissioner Haley or whatever we call Board Member Haley, and I'll say, oh, you didn't pay that part of the bill. I think you shouldn't have to, but I'll still be in the minority if elected November 2nd. And I imagine the majority of the board will say, yeah, well, sorry, you still have to pay that part of the bill too.
Okay, next we'll go to Brian Matlock with his answer to the question. Brian?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And the problem with the UG and BPU, whenever it's convenient, BPU's, kind of part of UG basically whenever it's serves them. No, we're a separate entity, and the lack of clarity and transparency for us ratepayers, for community members, is an issue that keeps us from having direct control and say in the governance of the utility. It's like, if it's more UG, then why do we have separate departments and not consolidate to do away with duplication of services? So certain things like this, it brings up another point, which is they'll shut you off for even being a few dollars, at least being out talking with community members. I hear all these horror stories, and I've talked to people who, oh, maybe they like didn't realize it was going to be late and didn't pay the extra charge, and there was this and that, and then they were shut off over a few dollars, and then, oh, our bad, but then it takes up to 24 hours to get reconnected. And so, like, we should put a baseline about how much we're going to not shut people off for being like just a few bucks or even a little bit delinquent. And then with this specific issue, it's like they have an agreement with UG to pay this money, and so they do it. And so on their end, if you don't pay, like, you just get treated like you haven't paid your utility bill. And so maybe if you want to do a nonviolent direct action to say, I'm not paying this, or something, you can see how that works out, but good chance they're going to shut you off.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now we'll move to Elnora Jefferson with her question. Elnora?
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I appreciate the robust discussion. I really do. And so while I had another question to ask, I'm going to change and ask the following question. First of all, I want to state it's my understanding that the reason that we are that the state has not pushed for the BPU to come underneath the Kansas the KCC is because we are a locally owned municipal utility, and because we have local oversight, we're supposed to provide that oversight function. So if that is not correct, I'd like for somebody to correct me. If that is correct, then it seems to me that something about what we just discussed, the authority of the BPU to disconnect electric and water services because one did not pay the UG charges, is an issue of policy. And so therefore we as a local community have the right to question that as part of our oversight responsibilities, as well as to address the accountability of what these payments are going for. So the question I have for the three candidates is this: could you pledge tonight to find out the answer to that question, the authority by which the BPU is able to disconnect electric and water services with a non-payment of UG charges? And would you be willing to provide that answer to the panelists here? And I'd like to say in a week, but I want to be fair because I know you're campaigning and have a life and that type of thing. So that's the question is would you be willing to find out that answer and report it back to us so that we would know and be able to act on it like that? That's it. Thank you.
Let me wait. I haven't started, Mr. Bland. If I could start, I'd appreciate. I have not begun any of the responses. With your permission, sir.
Well, okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I haven't begun any of the responses, and I want to be the first one to say that whether or not I'm elected November 2nd, I will find out prior to the election why or how the authority is vested by the unified government to receive and to compel the payment of taxes, or of unified government charges, also known as taxes, on our bill. So, I mean, that's just, it's going to be a matter of analyzing the Unified Government Charter, the UG Charter, and also probably the board of, or the bylaws of the BPU. And I will request through the open records provisions of our county clerk here at the Unified Government, as well as at the BPU. I will make that request and see where we can reconcile an answer to that question prior to the election, prior to November the 2nd.
Okay. Brian Matlock, your response. Brian, your mute is on, Brian. Yes.
Thank you. So are we just answering the end? You started with a separate kind of question. I'm trying to remember. Anyways. Yes, I'm happy to pledge to research that and make it known, both because it's partly a legal question, like why did municipalities start doing this, and then what's the specific agreement with the UG. So yeah, I'm happy to figure that out and put it forward. Was there another part of the question?
No.
All right.
Okay, Mary Gonzalez, your response.
It really on the accountability, along with finding out the authority to actually disconnect, is the accountability for where that money goes. That was another part of it.
Okay.
Is Elnora asking for the accountability of where the pilot money goes, or what the pilot's used for? Is that the question? Right.
Okay. The others are
Okay.
pretty well specified. Yes, ma'am.
All right. Well, I know that it's like 9% of our budget, which amounts to about 32 million, I think. And what the UG uses it for, I will pledge to find out. And I will also pledge to find out the other question about the payment of non-UG charges. What would happen with that? And I want to ask, do I get back to Merrill? Do I get back to Elnora? Who will I get back to with that information?
You can get back to me and I'll distribute to the rest of the people.
Okay, sounds good. I'll do that.
Thank you.
Okay, now we will move to closing statements. So we will start with Mary Gonzalez. Mary?
Okay. I sometimes feel really bad whenever we talk about the BPU because it's totally negative, always. And I will always try to find the positive in every situation. But in closing tonight, I just tell you a few things of what I will continue to work to accomplish. I will continue to work to make sure that the BPU is professional and ethical BPU. I'll make sure that it's an organization that meets the state and federal mandates. I will work to make sure that our rates remain competitive. I will work to see that we're an organization that continues to provide safe, clean drinking water and reliable power to our community. We do a really good job of that. I will make all the decisions that come before me with honesty and with integrity. I promise to use my most powerful energy and vitality to make our community and to make the BPU better. I humbly ask for your support and your vote on the 2nd of November. Thank you.
Okay. Brian Matlock, your closing remarks. You have 1 minute.
Hello, once again, thank you all for having us here and giving a chance for voters to hear what we care about. My name is Brian Matlock, and I am going to fight for a utility that doesn't have some of the murky, like, what is this used for? Why are all these charges? That it is transparent. We have clear information about how decisions are made, how money is spent for the community, that we actively seek to listen to the community, to invite them to participate in decision making, and that we fight for affordable rates for the people who are struggling in our county, for our average working families, for like that we make this fairly priced, transparent, and then towards the future, like aggressively pursue a sustainable energy future that will both help with the long-term costs as well as help our health and help our ability to maintain our society for the future. So please vote Matlock November 2nd, and thank you all so much.
Okay. Senator Haley, your closing remarks. You have 1 minute.
Well, thank you. In increasing numbers, you'll see signs going up, BPU Haley. You'll see our cards going out, putting the public back in the Board of Public Utilities. These are not cute phrases. They are what I think many would tell you has been just a record of accountability after having been elected to public service for many years. That's all David Haley wants to be. This is a nonpartisan race. I'm very honored to have Democrats, Republicans across the board say that they can count on me for a greater transparency and accountability if elected to the board come November 2nd, or advance vote beginning on the 23rd of October at various locations. We know, those of us that live in the real world of Wyandotte County, that there are some issues that need to be addressed by the board that the BPU has let flounder for years. Yes, it's run by one person, our general manager. I will, if elected, ensure that the general manager has a response to legitimate questions that are being raised all across the board from our communities as to how the board and how the utility is being implemented. That's my pledge. I realize that we cannot turn around this entire ocean-going liner that's headed in that direction very quickly, but we will get some greater answers to the questions. That I pledge if I'm elected, and I hope we will be. I want to thank each of you again for taking your time, Mr. Bland, Ms. Rupert, Ms. Jefferson, Mr. Rios, and again, the community college, Mr. Royer, for implementing and giving this opportunity for us to be heard.
Okay. Thank you.